talk to you a little bit about condition-dependent life history strategies. So understanding variation is a fundamental part of evolutionary biology. And life history is a fundamental concept in biology, which is really highly variable. And this variation doesn't just exist between species. Individuals within species can also vary significantly in life history. For example, these male pied flycatchers, some are monogamous while others are polygynous. And in rose beetles, some males are dominant and defend resources, while others are female mimics. So how might we explain some of this within population variation in life history? One life history trait that's highly variable but we still don't really understand is reproductive aging. So for example, in red deer, some individuals have really high early life reproductive performance but experience a really fast decline in this trait, whilst others maintain a more average performance in this trait. One factor that's likely to explain some of these patterns is variation in individual conditions, which I'm going to define in terms of resources in this context. So all individuals have to gather resources from the environment, which they allocate to different traits related to fitness. So how many resources you have is going to have really important consequences for the allocation strategy to these different traits. And in fact, several studies have found that reproductive aging patterns are condition dependent. But these patterns vary a lot in the literature. So in some species, like these bighorn sheep, the high condition individuals are able to maintain their reproductive advantage over their life. But in other species, like viability over here, high condition individuals perform best when they're young, but they perform worse when they're old. So on one hand, we might expect patterns like this in bighorn sheep, because it makes sense that if some individuals have more resources, that they might be able to perform better across a variety of traits. But how might we explain these patterns on the right, like in Scarabaeus? Well, in this species, these high-performing males are also the showiest females. So could it be that investment in these condition-dependent secondary sexual traits induces these life history trade-offs in high-condition individuals? So for example, the expression of many physical traits are condition-dependent. So like these male horn beetles here that produce larger horns, it could be that investment in these physical traits reduces a male's ability to then invest in other fitness-related traits, like testes or sperm performance, or even lifespan. So along with these physical traits, condition in males is also often associated with behavioural strategies. Larger high-condition males are often more aggressive and engage in territorial or combat displays. So males that engage in these types of behavioural strategies are likely to expose themselves to increased somatic damage or just increased energy expenditure associated with this type of strategy. But the relative role of these factors in condition-dependent life history trade-offs still remains unknown. So I used a species of Neriid fly to look closer at some of these patterns. This species that I used is native to southeastern Australia. And in this species, when larvae are exposed to a nutrient-rich diet, they emerge as much larger adults. And these silhouettes here represent actual size difference in males of different conditions. And this size difference in males is really important for male reproductive strategy. So males of this species fight for access to females, and these larger males are much more aggressive, and they also produce exaggerated secondary sexual traits within the forelimbs and the antlers of the larger males. This video didn't work, sorry. But basically what I wanted to show here is that when males fight, it can escalate to quite extreme behaviours, where they slam their bodies against each other. It can last for several minutes, and they can even lose limbs. So it's likely that this type of behavioural strategy is quite costly. But how this might manifest in life history is unclear. So to look at the effects of condition on male life history in this species, I had 2 condition treatments where larvae were either reared on a rich or a poor diet. And then to look at the effects of an aggressive behavioural strategy, I had 2 social treatments. So all males were housed at a standard male, and in my competitive social treatment, males were allowed to freely interact with this male. Whereas in my solitary treatment, males were separated from their standard with fly mesh, so they weren't able to fight. And so by doing this fully factorial design, I aim to test for the effects of both condition and the associated behavioural traits, as well as any interaction between these factors. So to quantify this, first I tested male performance under competition, and so to do this I put males into a competitive arena with 5 standard males and 3 standard females. I observed them for an hour, and I recorded how many matings they were able to attain, as well as their competitive behaviours. And I performed male performance in each of the focals when they were 15 and 35 days old to get a measure of young and old performance. So from this assay, we found that the large males were much more aggressive. These graphs here are the total number of fights, as well as the fights that escalated to a full combat. And the red lines here are my large males, and the solid line and dashed line represent my 2 social treatments. There wasn't an effect of social treatment here, but you can see the larger males are being much more aggressive over both ages. But when we look at reproductive success in this assay, I didn't actually find any benefits to being large and aggressive. So when males are young, they all have about the same reproductive success. And then when they're older, the smaller males are actually outperforming the large males, which is really surprising to me. I didn't expect to get this result. I did expect to find some benefit to being large and aggressive. So I also looked at male performance independent of competition. So to do this, I paired males with standard females, and from this I looked at viability of offspring produced by that female, and I did this every 10 days of the male's life. I also took some of these offspring produced in these assays and I looked at their performance. And apart from this, I also measured lifespan for focal males. So from this no-choice assay, we found that the large males did significantly worse in their offspring viability. So they're producing eggs with much lower viability. And again, there's no effect of social treatment here. They also found cost to being large in other life history traits that I looked at. So this is the survival curve of males in my 4 treatments. Again, the red line is the large males, and the solid line are males in my competitive treatment. And survival analysis did show that both large males and males in the competitive social treatment had a shorter lifespan, which suggests that there's a cost to both being large and a cost to being exposed to aggressive behaviours throughout a male's life. But there was no interaction between these factors. So like I mentioned, we also looked at performance of offspring from these males, and this is survival curves from some of those offspring. So the red lines are the survival curves from the large males, and you can see that they're significantly longer lived, especially in the curve way out to the right, which is male offspring of large males. They're much longer lived. So this might suggest that larger males are actually able to produce higher quality offspring. So overall, how did condition or size affect life history strategy for males of this species? Well, first of all, as we expected, the larger males were much more aggressive. But apart from this behavioural strategy, being large decreased males' lifespan, and larger males also performed worse in many of the other reproductive traits that I looked at, which suggests that there might be inherent costs to being large to males in their species. And how does this compare to the cost of being aggressive? Well, my results suggest that males that are exposed to aggressive behaviours have a shorter lifespan. But apart from this, social treatment didn't really affect male performance in anything else that I looked at. So to me, this suggests that decreased performance in large males was caused largely by inherent costs of being large, maybe due to the cost of producing or maintaining these exaggerated secondary sexual traits that I mentioned, rather than from any cost of being aggressive. So whilst I found many apparent costs of being large, I also found a few benefits, which is surprising to me. And whilst if there's a transgenerational benefit to being large, then that makes sense that this condition-dependent size would have evolved. But it doesn't explain to me why a condition-dependent behavioural strategy might have evolved in this species. And one explanation for this is that my behavioural results could be just an artefact of my experimental setup. In the wild, it might be that large males are much better at effectively excluding small males from the areas where females congregate. And it could be that the containers that I used were just too small to allow this to effectively happen, and that the males were experiencing density that was higher than what naturally occurs. So to know for sure, I'd really like to get out in the wild and have a look at the mating rates of large and small males under natural conditions. So overall, my results suggest that the life history trade-offs in large males of this species are caused by inherent cost of being large, rather than any cost of an aggressive behavioural strategy associated with size in this species. So to investigate this further, I'd really like to tease apart what exactly it is about being large that's costly. Like I mentioned, large males produce exaggerated secondary sexual traits. It would be really interesting to look at how the cost of producing or maintaining these traits might influence life history trade-offs in this species. So I just want to thank everyone that helped out with this project, especially my co-author Fatini. I couldn't have done it without you. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining along.
Okay, time for a question or two?
You mostly answered my question about the ability for these large males to potentially expel smaller males more easily in natural scenarios, but I just wonder if you could get some inference from more subtle things going on in your arenas. So are large males challenged more often? Or if you put them in a different competitive context, like with a bunch of small males that didn't challenge them, might you see these effects go away?
Well, as part of the competitive behaviour that I looked at, I also looked at how many interactions focal males initiated. So the large males actually initiating more fights as well. But I mean, it's hard to say. We've never actually quantified their behaviour in the wild. And I think it's likely that there's a bit of like a sort of behaviour going on in terms of where the large and small males congregate. Yeah.
I think we better move along in the interest of time.